Chapter 10 of the Wonderful History of Peter Schlemihl by Adelbert von Chamisso. Translated by Frederick H. Hedge. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10. I fell in speechless adoration on my knees and shed tears of thankfulness, for suddenly my future stood clear before my soul. For early offence thrust out from the society of men, I was cast, for compensation, upon nature, which I ever loved. The earth was given me as a rich garden, study for the object and strength of my life, and science for its goal. It was no resolution which I adopted. I only have since, with severe unremitted diligence, striven faithfully to represent what then stood clear and perfect before my eye, and my satisfaction has depended on the agreement of the representation with the original. I roused myself in order without delay and with a hasty survey to take possession of the field where I should hereafter reap. I stood on the heights of Tibet, and the sun, which had risen upon me only a few hours before, now already stooped to the evening sky. I wandered over Asia from east to west, overtaking him in his course, and entered Africa. I gazed about me with eager curiosity, as I repeatedly traversed it in all directions. As I surveyed the ancient pyramids and temples in passing through Egypt, I descried in the desert not far from 100-gated Thebes the caves where the Christian anchorites once dwelled. It was suddenly firm and clear in me. Here is thy home. I selected one of the most concealed, which was at the same time spacious, convenient, and inaccessible to the jackals, for my future abode, and again went forward. I passed at the Pillars of Hercules over to Europe, and when I reviewed the southern and northern provinces, I crossed from northern Asia over the polar glaciers to Greenland and America, traversed both parts of that continent, and the winter, which already reigned in the south, drove me speedily back northward from Cape Horn. I tarried a while till it was day in eastern Asia, and, after some repose, continued my wandering. I traced through both Americas the mountain chain which constitutes the highest known acclivities on our globe. I stalked slowly and cautiously from summit to summit, now over flaming volcanoes, now snow-crowned peaks, often breathing with difficulty, when, reaching Mount St. Elias, I sprang across Bering Straits to Asia. I followed the western shores in their manifold windings, and examined with especial care to ascertain which of the islands were accessible to me. From the peninsula of Malacca my boots carried me to Sumatra, Java, Bali, and Lombok. I attempted often with danger, and always in vain, a northwest passage over the lesser islets and rocks with which this sea is studded, to Borneo and the other islands of this archipelago. I was compelled to abandon the hope. At length I seated myself on the extreme portion of Lombok, and gazing toward the south and east, wept, as at the fast closed bars of my prison, that I had so soon discovered my limits. New Holland, so extraordinary and so essentially necessary to the comprehension of the earth and its sun-woven garment, the vegetable and the animal world, with the South Sea and its zoophyte islands, was interdicted to me, and thus, at the very outset, all that I should gather and build up was destined to remain a mere fragment. O my Adelbert, what after all are the endeavours of man? Often did I in the severest winter of the southern hemisphere endeavour, passing the polar glaciers westward, to leave behind me those 200 strides out from Cape Horn, which sundered me probably from Van Diemen's Land and New Holland, regardless of my return, or whether this dismal region should close upon me as my coffin lid, making desperate leaps from ice drift to ice drift, and bidding defiance to the cold and the sea. In vain. I never reached New Holland, but every time I came back to Lambok, seated myself on its farthest peak, and wept again with my face turned toward the south and east, as at the fast closed bars of my prison. I tore myself at length from this spot, and returned with a sorrowful heart into Inner Asia. I traversed that farther, pursuing the morning dawn westward, and came, yet in the night, to my proposed home in the Thebais, which I had touched upon in the afternoon of the day before. As soon as I was somewhat rested, and when it was day again in Europe, I made it my first care to procure everything which I wanted. First of all, stop-shoes, for I had experienced how inconvenient it was when I wished to examine near objects, not to be able to slacken my stride except by pulling off my boots. A pair of slippers drawn over them had completely the effect which I anticipated, and later I always carried 2 pairs, since I sometimes threw them from my feet without having time to pick them up again, when lions, men, or hyenas startled me from my botanizing. My very excellent watch was, for the short duration of my passage, a capital chronometer. Besides this, I needed a sextant, some scientific instruments, and books. To procure all this, I made several anxious journeys to London and Paris, which, auspiciously for me, a mist just then overshadowed. As the remains of my enchanted gold was now exhausted, I easily accomplished the payment by gathering African ivory, in which, however, I was obliged to select only the smallest tusks, as not too heavy for me. I was soon furnished and equipped with all these, and commenced immediately, as private philosopher, my new course of life. I roamed about the earth, now determining the altitudes of mountains, now the temperature of its springs and the air, now contemplating the animal, now inquiring into the vegetable tribes. I hastened from the equator to the pole, from one world to the other, comparing facts with facts. The eggs of the African ostrich or the northern sea fowl, and fruits, especially of the tropical palms and bananas, were even my ordinary food. In lieu of happiness I had tobacco, and of human society and the ties of love, one faithful poodle, which guarded my cave in the Thebais, and when I returned home with fresh treasures, sprang joyfully toward me and gave me still a human feeling that I was not alone on the earth. An adventure was yet destined to conduct me back among mankind. End of chapter 10.